All right, my friends. Today, we're continuing what we began yesterday. What did we begin yesterday? How God's name is found in each and every one of us. Here he's speaking more exactly about every Jew, but the fact of the matter is it's found to some degree in every human being. Why I say that? The fact is God's name is found in everything. But here it's implying work, serving God. That's they say the novelty of Judaism, the unique element which is brought by Judaism to the world, and that is serving God. Serving God. All the other ideas, even the other religions, are talking about basically serving yourself. It's just talking about what to do in order to benefit yourself to the ultimate degree. How to get to heaven, how to get blessings, how to get this. But Judaism says no, the main thing in the world, in fact, the only purpose man was created was not to serve himself, not to make himself bigger, but to make God bigger. So we say, there's a prayer in Judaism called Kaddish, the Kaddish prayer. That's in the way the holiest prayer in Judaism. Kaddish. They say it for dead people also, but it has nothing to do with death. It's praising God. And it says, Yehi Shmei Rabba Mavorach. We'll talk about that today. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mavorach. May your great name be blessed forever and ever. How do we bless God's name? How do we do it? Work. You have to work. We're only interested in making God bigger. Yesh me Rabba, your great name should be blessed forever and ever. That's the job of the Jewish people. Somehow or other, not to think about yourself, even though it seems disastrous to do so, but it'll come out okay. That's the point of Judaism. Not to think about yourself, to think about what God wants. And of course, that's opposite human nature. That's why the Jews didn't want to go into the land of Israel, why they refused, right? The story with Moses and the spies, why all the Jews followed after Korach. Right after that, story right after that, stood up a person called Korach, and he said, follow me, let's rebel against Moses. And everybody said, okay. And Korach was, basically a nobody. He never did anything for the Jews. And then Moses took them out of Egypt and he provided them manna from heaven. But Moses demanded that the Jews think about God more than they think about themselves. And even more, their priorities should be to do, think of what God wants and not what they themselves want. And people don't like that. People want to be God. They want to be them. They want to be the boss. So that's what it means having God's name inside of you. In other words, manifesting the aspects of God, the fact that we're created in God's image, to manifest that in our thought, speech, action, and our feelings and our emotions, to manifest that, because the fact is it's true. That's the whole business. It's true. We are in fact being created. That's the fact. It's not just a way of looking at the world, or use this trick and imagine X, Y, and then life will be easier. Imagine that you're not alone and God is watching you. Okay, these things might help you in your day-to-day life, but we're talking about things that do not necessarily help you. Abraham went through a terrible life because he believed in God. Right? God promised him all sorts of things, and he's wondering when he had to circumcise himself. And God promised him, and he didn't get anything that God promised him. God promised him his children were going to be, his offspring were going to be like the stars of this in the sky and the sand on the sea. And nothing. He didn't have any stars in the sky. And so he had one son, and God said, take him and kill him. And he said, oh, okay, no problem. So the Judaism is how we can think about what is right and to do it even at self-expense, self-sacrifice. Okay. So that means embodying God's name. Okay, so God's name is the four letters Yud, and then Hey, and then Vav, and then Hey. We talked about yesterday the Yud and the Hey. which is very, very important. What's the Yud and the Hey? To think, to contemplate, to want to know what the truth is. The natural tendency for a person is to say, leave me alone. I know myself, right? If you're presented with a problem, you want to solve a problem, you want to heal somebody, or you want justice, you want this. So then maybe you're going to go and learn to be a doctor, you'll learn to be a lawyer. But there's no problems in the world. What type of problem is there? The world is a problem. You just get along. That's it. You get along in the world. And he comes Abraham, and he says there's a big problem in the world. And that is that people don't know that they're being created. And they don't know that they're being created for a purpose. That's a big problem. And people have to know what their obligation to the Creator is. That's why they're being created. People have to know this. And everybody said, Abraham, what are you talking about? What, leave me alone. Right? I want to bow down. They bow down to idols. What's wrong with idols? Because idols is for me, what I'm going to get. I want to go to heaven. I'm going to get blessings. I'm going to get this. So I'm doing it for myself. Not that it's bad to think about yourself, but you have to think about yourself second. First of all, you have to think about the Creator. What does the Creator want? And then think about yourself in that proper framework. Okay, thinking about what the Creator wants and that there is a Creator. First of all, that there is a Creator, and to feel that there is a Creator, that's the letter Yud of God's name. That's called Chachma. Wow. It's sometimes called faith. It's above understanding. That's the Yud of God's name. Being willing to accept the fact that God is above me, that God is creating me. What that means, what it implies, I don't know. But at least start off, I'm not God. I'm not God. What is God? Talk about that in a minute. Right, that's the beginning of good. I am not God, there is God. True, that also can bring to idolatry and to this, but okay. Right? And in that way, religion, even idolatry, is better than atheism. Like I've said so many times, there's no such thing as atheism. There's only I-theism. A person believes in himself as I. I'm God. I control the shots. I write the Bible. I decide what's good and bad. I would that. That's what happened. That's what God told. That's what the snake said to Chava. He said that you're going to eat from the tree. You're going to be like God. You're going to know good and bad. And she said, that's pretty good. God doesn't want you to do that, right? God, because you're going to be his competition. Don't do it. And that's what happened. She ate from the tree, and all of a sudden she said, no, I can call the shots. I'm going to say what's good and bad. Okay, so that's the Yud. The Yud is to know, sometimes that's called the upper fear of God. To know that I am not the boss, that there is God. What that implies, what it means, that's the letter Hey. The letter Hey is already implying something wide, something big. That's understanding, contemplating. What is this implied by this idea that God exists? What's implied? What's implied? So just simply, okay, if God is really creating me, so maybe he's creating me for a purpose. Maybe there's good things, maybe there's bad things. That's why God gave the Torah. God gave the Torah, that the Torah is the ability to understand something about God. Something about God, what God wants, what God likes, what God doesn't want, what God prohibits, how God creates the world, what God creates the world, the ways he creates the different worlds, different levels of reality. Our level of reality is the lowest, most deceptive, it is a dark level of reality that there can possibly be. But that's all we feel. So you have to really contemplate and think, well, one second, if there really is God, then why don't I feel him? So maybe, okay, so you look in the books, let's look at some books. You look in the books, say, listen, there's a lot of levels of creation and concealment. All the spiritual worlds. The spiritual worlds, oh, that's God. So no, spirit worshiping the spiritual worlds, that's idolatry. Let's start thinking. That's called the letter Hey of God's name. Thinking. Is this really God? Is the sun, the moon, the stars? Maybe heaven is God. Maybe spiritual things are God. maybe this, let's think about it. That's the letter Hey. And Hey, that's what we got up to yet. I made this small. I'm going to make it bigger again. Here we go. What happened? You got to go like this, and then you go like this. 1 second. Oh. There we go. Now it's bigger. Okay. Okay. Well, based on these two levels, we did this a little bit yesterday, but we'll continue here today. I find my nose paper. You base these two levels, Chachma and Bina. In other words, the first concept that there's God, and then Bina trying to understand this, widening up all the implications, etc., have to be constantly by a person and serving God. And they have to be never separated. You have to have the proper, how do you say, inspiration, that's the letter Yud, and you have to have the proper understanding, that's the letter Hey. They have to be together. Because these two levels, it says in the Zohar, that they are true two friends, two lovers, the lomit parshin, that they can never be separated. Chachma and Bina. Having the right concept of God, the right inspiration about God, and the right understanding. They have to be together. And therefore, there has to be gamba adam, also a person can't the same thing. The hainu lisbon, a person has to think. Ulamik, and to deepen his mind, binaso, and his understanding, ba'orach varochav, in deep going and wide. In other words, to try to get to the source of things. And also, rochav means the implication of what it means that God exists and that God creates v'kafi asher yad sichlo, according to how his ability of his mind, of ruach binaso, and his understanding reaches. Love, and to surrender yourself to God, and to cling to God by mesirut nefesh, with self-sacrifice. That's what I talked about before. That's the idea. When you realize that God is creating me, so you say, wow, how can I connect to this? With a level, that's this level of chachma, this point of inspiration. It's also a point where you feel that I don't really exist. I'm just being created all the time. That's chachma. That's this feel. That's the inspiration feeling. Shalamayla, it's above understanding. Okay, so we have chachma and bina. Chachma means this, the essence, the first spark of the Jewish feeling, which is God is creating me. I am being created. You understand this? No. You feel it? Not really. Maybe a little bit intellectually. Could it be true? Could be, right? Could be. What does it mean? I don't know. It says that a thief, and it says in the Talmud, it's really in the book called Ein Yaakov, that a thief, maybe a Jewish thief, before he goes to steal, he prays to God. And he has this yud. He knows there is God, and he knows that God is creating him, but he's a thief. That's going against God. How can he do that? Because he didn't really, how do you say, the implications, what it means that there's God, he didn't really sort of develop, sort of very infantile sort of belief in God, feeling of God. But nevertheless, that's essential. This, that there is God, is feeling in a way, it's better that the thief prays to God before he steals than he doesn't pray to God before he steals. I mean, of course, it's better if he doesn't steal, but at least he's praying to God. But the problem is this chachma, you got it. But the bina is a little bit messed up. The bina, the understanding of what it is, the depth, the implications of it. She'im lo yiyeh lo b'chinat bittul, because if you don't have this surrender to God, azay afilu im yidbonen. On the other hand, let's take a person that he understands God, and he can think deeply into the greatness of God, kafi kolcho, according to his ability, and he even gives birth to this love and fear, because God is so great and God's so wonderful, but it's not going to last, because the real thing by a person, if he's lacking this chachma, this point, the real basic of everything is that I exist. Me. Lo yem kiyum emiti, then it'll fall from his level, chas v'sholom. And that's why it was possible for the Jewish people to receive the Torah at Mount Sinai and then to worship the golden calf. Because they've received the Torah at Sinai, they understood that God is creating them, they understood everything. But as soon as Moses wasn't gone to inspire them all the time, so all the understanding they had, they understood everything, but they didn't feel it. They didn't have this yud, they didn't have the inspiration. The letter yud, this what's called bittul, surrender to the Creator. God wasn't number one, that he creates me. I'm number one, and I house God, right? Because it says wisdom enlivens its owner. This is where we got up to yesterday. Bal Omara, and there's Chachma, that's this little point of inspiration that enlivens its owner. What's the owner? Understanding. Understanding what God is. So a person can, if you don't have the understanding, then anything goes, right? You feel God exists. God, I can be a thief, I can be a murderer, I can do anything I want. God is with me, God is creating me. Anything I want, I can do. Let's take the other way around, though. Let's take a person that he does understand. He understands everything. He can give classes. He can explain in Hasidus and everybody. He doesn't have that feeling of surrender to God, that chachma. If you don't have chachma, what do you have? You have egotism. You feel yourself. And so that's what it says, that chachma, this feeling of surrender to God, enlivens its owner. The owner is understanding. Why is it called the owner? Chachma should be the owner, right? Understanding is just sort of, that's the second stage. First of all, you have this feeling of God, the inspiration, that's chachma, that I am nothing and all there is God. And then after that, you take possession of it, you own it. You put it in your mind, but you don't really own it. The owner is God, right? He says, no. It's called chachma tichia balel. This is a sentence in Job, I think. I forget always to look for it. It says that wisdom enlivens its owner. Who is the owner? Perish balel targum bal mara, ribon, an owner. That bina owns chachma. Your understanding owns it. Hainu afilu mashi yeshlo bechinas memshala ala ora bechinas zu, namely that which rules over this ray of inspiration. Okay, he's bonus begadolas Hashem, because when you think about God in a wide way and a deep way, yeshlo maila, there's a big advantage on this surrender from chachma that we said before. Why? Lefi, because she'ein machshava tafisa bey, there's no thought that can possibly grasp God. Ki im ha'ora, just a little ray of godliness. Mi bechinas chachma. Although he's bonus one, the third person thinks about what God is. So if you just have this feeling of God, so you can do whatever you want to. Right? You can do whatever you want to. You feel God, and then you can go and steal and do whatever you want. Although he's bonus when a person thinks into it and he contemplates what it means, hari a machshava, the thought, all of a sudden grasps a little bit of what God is. So you become, so to speak, the boss over this feeling of God. That's the main thing of a man. What's human being? A human being is that he has understanding. He can make choices. You can have choices. This feeling of godliness that completely negates you, so to speak, it's a little bit, it's not human. It's just the God is the ultimate. He's the creator. He's above everything. There's nothing except for him. So what am I supposed to do with this? Just feel it. Okay, but eventually it's going to come that you're going to want to do something. I mean, here we are. We're creations. We have to do something where we exist, right? So Bina, that makes us use the fact that we're a creation, that we're separate, to try to integrate ourselves with this inspiration of God. So therefore, the understanding, that's the real human part of it. Understanding. When grasp. Nevertheless, nevertheless, this little point of wisdom, of inspiration, this is what gives life. It's called the point inside of the palace. So again, you can have a rabbi that knows all of Kabbalah and knows everything. Here we have the classic, tragic case was Yerovam ben Nevat. It says Yerovam ben Nevat, he was right in the beginning of the first temple. And he was holy of holies. He knew everything. All the other wise men of the generation were, like it says, like chaff in front of him. He sat and he learned with the angels, with the Achi Ashiloni, with understanding. I don't know if in the history of Judaism was a person that understood more than him, maybe King Solomon. Maybe. Understood all the Kabbalistic ideas and understood everything there was to understand. He understood it. This is the beginning of the first temple, right? This is higher than Rabbi Akiva and those people. That was after the end of the second temple. That's like 1,000 years later. This is the earlier generations were much higher and closer to godliness. And he understood everything. And he became an idolater because he lacked that little understanding. He understood everything, but he lacked that little point of chachma, of wisdom. He lacked that surrender to God. I mean, who am I to judge a person like that? But that's what it says in the Mishnah. So there has to be this little point. So Chachma and Bina, they always have to be together. Chachma is this point of inspiration, this awareness that I am being created, this feeling that I am really nothing, that God is everything. He's creating me all the time from nothing. And Bina is taking this feeling and how do you say, building it, widening it. Bina for the word to build, building it. What does this mean? What does it imply? If so, God gave the Torah. It's the same God that gave the Torah that's creating me. What should I do with this? That's understanding. Shanakuda, that this little point, this enlivens the Heichal. I'm skipping this point. This is just the footnote. This little point enlivens what's called the palace. The point is this inspiration of Chachma that enlivens the palace, which that's being understanding. She'em ein nekuda ein eichel mishamesh klum. If there's no point to your understanding, then your understanding doesn't serve anyone. Okay, so what's the Rebbe saying? You have to have Chachma and Bina. Chachma, when we're talking about serving God, Chachma means the awareness that God is creating me. Awareness that everything is being created by God. Nothing exists. All there is God. That's the awareness. But there has to be also Bina. What does that mean? What does it mean? If there's nothing except for God, then who did he give the Torah to? Why did he give the Torah? But we don't exist. So why did he give the Torah? Why did he create the world? Why does it seem that everything exists? Why is it forbidden to steal, to lie? Nothing exists, right? So why shouldn't anything be forbidden? To think about this, to understand it. How is it that God creates me? I don't feel him. Should be such an obvious thing. Why? Understand. That's Bina. So Chachma and Bina have to work together. That's called the point. That's Chachma in the Heichal, in the palace. Shenakuda, that this little point, this enlivens, this gives a reason for the palace. If there's no king in the palace, the whole thing is not worth anything. She'im ein nakuda, if there's no point, then there's no palace. You don't know what to do with your understanding. And even if there is bechinas nakuda, even if you have this point, let's say you only have the point alone, you have this feeling of God and the awareness that all this, but if there's no palace, if there's no understanding to build it around, it's not useful. It's not, you can't utilize it. Therefore, there has to be both of them. And they are trained reim, the lomis portion, that they're not separate. It's almost like, let's say you have a computer and you have the directions of the computer. So the computer, that's the thing. You've got it, here you have it, but you don't have any directions. You don't know what to do with it. You don't know what to do with it. So here it's wonderful. You have a screen, you can mess around, everything, but you don't know exactly what to do. It's the same thing. You have a feeling of godliness. You have God. That's so to speak, the machine, the reality. But you don't know what to do with reality. So Chachma is to know that the reality is God, and that God is creating everything. God is creating the spiritual. God is creating me. God is creating from nothing, every second brand new. That's Chachma. Bina is to understand, why is he doing it? What should I do with this feeling? What that also gives you more of a feeling of an appreciation of God, how close God is, how infinite God is, to think about it. That's that's understanding. And just give me one moment here. We'll take a short break. 1 second. Here we go. All right, so up till now we've discussed the Yud and the Hey in each and every Jew, which enables us to serve the creator of the universe. Yud is this awareness that God creates us, the feeling that there is nothing except for God. Hey is understanding this, contemplating it, deepening in our mind. What does this mean? How to arouse in our mind an appreciation for God, God's closeness, God's infiniteness, God's power, God's love, God this. That's Yud and Hey, Chachma and Bina. Now, what about the third third letter of God's name? Vav. Vav of the name. I'm going to see this is going to be very important. Vav of God's name, Hu Bechinat Nachal Eitan. This is what's called the river Eitan, powerful river. Now, why the Vav of God's name is like a line, right? A Vav is a line, and it's coming from Chachma Bina. That's intellect, having the right concept of God and the right understanding of God. Okay, Vav is drawing that down into reality, into our emotions. It's very, very possible. Unfortunately, it's all too actual that people can be inspired about God and to understand God and this. But as soon as there comes the slightest temptation or difficulty or the conflict, they opt out. I can't, whether it's from outside or inside. I'm turning back this thing on again. Excuse me 1 second. Too warm. Sorry, 1 minute. It's very hot and stifling for the last, who knows what. Good proof for global warming, I think. But I don't know if there's such a thing, but it's really hot here. Okay, so we've got in our personality, we're trying to open this up. We're trying to awaken in ourselves. Yud is the awareness that there is God and the feeling that there's nothing except for him. Hey is understanding as much as possible, to contemplate, to think about God, to understand God. Vav means to get emotional. Vav is drawing down from the understanding, drawing it down into emotion and into action. That's sometimes very difficult. That's sometimes very, very difficult. A person can have wonderful ideas and make wonderful resolutions and with the thing, but when it really comes to actually feeling something or doing something, he doesn't feel right. He's an intellect. He's a cold person, and he doesn't feel any of these ideas about God and how real God is. And that's the idea of Vav. Vav is sometimes the Vav is like a line. It's drawing God, these ideas and these awareness and these concepts down into our personality. That's the Vav. Vav is a line. Also, Vav is the number 6 in Hebrew. It's 6. That corresponds to the 6 emotions. Chachma and Bina is Yud and Hey, and Vav is the 6 emotions. Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. This is what's also called the Nachal Eitan, the powerful river. Eitan means ancient or powerful, firm. Nachal is a river. Shemibechinat Eitan, that comes from this level of Eitan, the essence of the soul that we spoke about before. Yored comes down, Bechinat Nachal comes a river. Bechinat Hamshacha Lamata, it's drawn down below, Lamakom, to the emotions of the heart. And they are divided into 6 levels. Vav, that's the Vav. And why we have this Vav is to transform our natural emotions, our natural personality, Lahavcham Lakadusha, to holiness. To get excited about God, to love God, to fear God, to be powerful, assertive because of God, to attach to God instead of attaching to ourselves or to the world or whatever. But afterwards, the beginning Hey. Then afterwards, there's the last letter of God's name, and that's the letter Hey. What is Hey? That's the last Hey of God's name. That's our thought, speech, and action. Hey has 3 pillars to a thought is the top. speech, and action is the third one. Now, thought, speech, and action is not exactly the same thing as thinking. Chachma bina b'das. Chachma bina das. Chachma and bina is what you think about, the ideas, the concept itself that you think about. And machshava, that's the how do you say, the garments that you put into it. For instance, a French physicist will think the ideas in French, physics in French, and a German will think of it in German. The thoughts that he thinks in German and French, that's the garments, that's the thought. What he's thinking about, that's the wisdom, or the understanding. Nevertheless, what are you going to use your thought for, your speech, your action? What are you going to use it for? This corresponds to to use it only for God. Think about God, say what God wants, do what God wants. And that doesn't mean you have to be in the synagogue all day. It means you can do in your business, you can work, be a regular person with your family, and you can say jokes, and you can do everything. But everything you're doing, you're sure that this is within the format of the Torah. So therefore, there has to be the Vav is drawing these ideas, Yud and then Hey of God's name, into your emotions, 6 emotions. And the last letter of God's name, that's Hey, that we want to put that into our, we're talking about integrating this into our personality. The last Hey, that's our thought, speech, and action. Ubekin is Torah, Shabal Peh, and this comes down to be the oral Torah. Malchus, Korean law, this is called kingship. That's God's kingship, the Hey. The Gadol Talmud and great is the learning Torah because it brings to action. Okay, here we go. The Torah is the whole basis of this whole business. Let's not get so spiritual and how do you say, the Kabbalistic, that we forget about the main thing. One second, where is this? Here we go. The main thing is the Torah. The main thing is the Torah. Don't forget, these Kabbalistic ideas are not just here to improve our personality or to make us more successful in life or to take away our frustrations and our lack of identity or to express our real self and to manifest our true identity. And that's not so. I mean, those could be also nice things. Those are good things. There's nothing wrong with those things, but that's not the purpose of what we're learning over here. But what we're learning over here is, in the end, how to think, speak, and do what God wants. That's the main point. Torah. What the Torah says we should think, that we think. What the Torah says we should do, that's what we do. What the Torah says we should say, that's what we should say. And the Torah is very, very, the framework is very, very loose. It's very, very big, right? Very, very good. But nevertheless, don't go outside of it. Don't go outside of this framework. That's the main thing. Come Shabbos, you have to keep Shabbos. Put on tefillin, you have to put on tefillin. Kosher, you have to eat kosher. Then there's the emotions about God. Emotions are to love God, to fear God. Those are essential. That's like the soul inside of the body. But the body of Judaism is the Torah, and especially the oral Torah, especially the Talmud. From the Talmud comes out the laws. It comes out the laws. Okay. This goes down to where? Down to, found this before. Excuse me, please. This is just, these are commentaries by the first Rebbe's grandson, which they're also worth learning, but okay. sorry. Oh, here it is. Here it is. The Inyan Bechinas Elu, and all these four levels, which we said, Chachma, Bina, Yud, and then Hey, and then the six emotions, Vav, and then the last day, thought, speech, and action. These are nirmazim, which are hinted at by the name of God, who in Kabbalah the Torah. That's the whole idea of the receiving of the Torah. When God spoke, and he said, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am God, your God, at Mount Sinai. That's the real. We're going to see that this is the real basis of Judaism. Abraham was the founder of Judaism. He put the spirit, the attitude we should have in Judaism, and we got out of Egypt. That should be our, to know that we're not stuck in the world. Our an impetus in Judaism. But the main thing in Judaism is when we receive the Torah. When we received the Torah, we became different people. We became a different nation when we received it. God himself, the creator of the whole entire universe, spoke to the Jewish people. This makes, how do you say, no sense to the second power. That God creates the world, that makes no sense. Right? That God creates the world, we don't feel it. Makes no sense. We have to believe it. But that God took us out of Egypt, that's a big, tremendous miracle. Only the Jewish people, that makes even more no sense. That's even more nonsensical. But that God told us in the Mount Sinai and spoke to all the Jewish people, God spoke. Mainly before you could say it was God was the power, he was the force, he was he controlled nature, and nature does what he wants to. But here God is giving us all these laws that make no sense whatsoever. And God really cares about this. You must honor your father and your mother. You must not desire that which is of someone else. God himself said this. This is not just to keep society going. And there's a lot of laws there that have nothing to do with society or anything, but nothing. Don't eat milk and meat together. Right? You said that in the same breath that you said don't kill people. That's important to you. Right? Don't eat from an animal not slaughtered properly. Who cares about what type of a God is that? Who cares about that? Doesn't make any sense. But that's the essence of Judaism, the details. And that when God gave us this, he gave us implanted in us a new personality that accepts this fact, that wants to do the commandments, that feels and knows and understands that these little details are the will of the creator of the universe. He gave us a new soul. That's the idea of the giving of the Torah. The Dibur, when God spoke and said, I am God, your God. And that's what the rabbis say about an uber. It says that a fetus, but betet imo, it says a Jewish child, when he's a fetus in the womb of his mother, it says what happens over there. This is right before it starts off in the Tanya. The Tanya starts off in the third sentence of this statement over here. It's in the Gemara Nida. It says that a fetus, before the baby comes out from its mother's womb, ner dolek al rosho, there is a lamp which is lit over his head. Umalamdim oto, and he is taught kol Torah kulo, all of the Torah. Jewish child, every Jewish child, even if you don't know you're Jewish, you have a Jewish mother, you're Jewish, your soul in your mother's womb was taught the whole Torah. What are you teaching a baby, a fetus, Torah for? What's it got to know about that? What do you have to teach him? To teach him how to where his mother's breasts are or something, because he needs the milk. How to breathe, something. What are they teaching him the Torah for? It says, but that's what they teach him. They teach him the whole entire Torah. Ner daluk, this lamp which is lit over the fetus's head, this is the Yud of God's name. Umalamdim oto Torah, they teach him the whole entire Torah. This is the Hey of God's name. Until we come down to the last Hey of God's name, what to actually do. Lomer l'cha, to tell you, shekol inyan mi bechinos elu, all these levels, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey of the name of God from Yud until the last hay. In other words, the last hay is what to do. Malamdim oto, they teach the child, kadei, in order liot lo achar leidato, after he gives birth, but seto la'avir, and when it comes out to the world, yoter benakal, easier. You easier to fiset bekalita tabachina. It'll make more sense, right? You tell the child, no, it's Shabbat. You don't light lights on Shabbat. Oh yeah, I didn't know it was Shabbat, right? What do you? The child should say, what are you talking about? You light lights 6 days of the week, nothing happens, right? I see there's all these non-Jews lighting lights, nothing happens. But it doesn't say that doesn't happen. A child that's born into a religious family, and they tell him don't light lights on Shabbos, it's accepted by him. He doesn't light lights on Shabbos. It's accepted. Okay, there's also opposition. There's also there's different personalities and different people, but nevertheless, somewhere down deep there, it makes sense that this is really what God, the creator of the universe, wants, right? That we shouldn't turn on our cellular phones on Shabbos. Makes no sense. To a baby, it makes young children, it makes sense. If they're educated properly, that's the problem. But nevertheless, it makes sense to them. And in the end, to every Jew, all the Jews, there's a lot of Jews, by the way, that what they call do tshuva. They go back to their Jewish soul. And when they do, they don't become religious people. They don't necessarily become religious and they say, well, they're only thinking about the Lord and I have been a big sinner up to now. I have done bad things. I have this. They say, listen, up to now I made some big mistakes. And, unless, God forbid, they did really something really bad. That every person feels pangs of conscience, if he does something really, really bad. But usually people nowadays, when they Jews, when they come back to Judaism, so there were so many years they didn't eat kosher, they didn't keep Shabbos, so they say, okay, that was in the past. I didn't know, and now I do. They don't feel like deep pangs of conscience. Oh, I'm so evil, I'm so bad, I'm so this. I mean, of course, there might be people that do, but that's not the point. The point is, now, you like the policeman tells you, listen, you're in England, you're driving on the wrong side of the road. So I didn't see any people. But you're on the wrong. Okay, I didn't know. Okay, look, same thing. All your life you were driving on the wrong side of the road, but now there's the right side of the road, and you feel that it's the right side because the Jew was taught this in his mother's womb. Before, that's the name of God, which is implanted in every single Jew. The problem is we have to activate it. It's taught to us before we were born, and if a person gets the proper education, so to a certain degree is in tune with it, but you have to activate this understanding of God and the emotions. You have to do it yourself. Your father and your mother can't do it for you. They can teach you what to do. They can teach you to be religious. They can teach you to go through the motions, but they can't teach you to be genuine. And that's what the Rebbe wants us here to feel, that we're genuine. I'm not doing it because my father told me to do it. I'm doing it because I feel that God is personally creating me. And that God taught me the whole Torah before I was born. The Torah is intrinsic, essential to my very creation. It preceded my creation. That's what's called God's name, is inside of us. But we have to activate it. Tefisa Makom. No, okay. But Omer Rizal, the rabbi says, now we're in exile. Ain't Hashem Shalom. God's name is not complete. All these things that we just finished saying, put them on hold. Namely the letters Vav K, the second two letters, even if you think about God and you understand God, but the second two letters, your emotions and your actions, they are separated from the Yud. And nowadays, the service of God is, it says, Afalpi, even though that a person thinks, and he deepens his mind of the greatness of God, and he sinks his mind, his feeling of reality, his dot, into this bittul love, how God is creating me, and etc. Nevertheless, Enopolis, it doesn't make me emotional at all. Lahafa Hamidas, to transform my love and my fear to be that I should be fiery, interested in God and excited about God and have a thirst for God like King David did, because now we're in exile and we don't have that. to transform our emotions of love and fear from to be revealed. No, that we just because why? Because now that's the reason of exile. exile, the fact that the Jews are in exile, that is the essence of what exile is. Not just the Jews politically are not in the land of Israel. It's that the Jews emotionally and actually are not inspired by God. But it could be they even do what they're supposed to do. They do the commandments, they're living in Israel, but they have no real love of God. They're doing it for political reasons, they're doing it for nationalistic reasons, right? Every non-Jews also have nationalism, right? They're very proud of their country when the flag goes up, right? Everybody sings and everything. I was once in Mexico. My wife took me to Mexico. We went to Mexico and we went to some sort of a show, and some guy came driving in. That was part of the show. The end of the show was some guy came driving. It was sort of like a rodeo with a horse with a Mexican flag, and the people went berserk. The Mexican flag, and they stood and they sang the Mexican anthem, and so they have. Jews also have a nationalistic feeling. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about really appreciating, loving, and fearing God. And says the Rebbe, now we're in exile, so the Yud and the Hey, they could be together. You could have the proper concept and the proper understanding of God, but it just doesn't affect our emotions. How to get out of this, we're going to talk about this, God willing, tomorrow. And now let us do the Yom Yom.